Very warm welcome for joining us in today's webinar on faceless assessments. It looks like a recent development, but there's a long history attached to that, and we shall cover the same shortly. I am Vikas Vasal, National Managing Partner Tax for Grant Thornton in India. We have an illustrious panel today, which is a mix of tax experts, representatives from the Income Tax Department, who have actually built up and have been in the thick of the things in terms of the national e-assessment, and also industry representation, both from IT sector as well as the pharma sector. So let me introduce our panel first. We are privileged to have two departmental representatives with us today, Mr. Ashish Abrol. He's a senior IRS officer of 1993 batch. He has worked in different roles and capacities for the Government of India in the Income Tax Department and Enforcement Directorate. He has been awarded many prestigious awards, including the Prime Minister's Award for Excellence. And one very interesting facet of his is that he is doing his PhD thesis on cyber security and surveillance for economic reasons. So we are privileged to have you with us today. We also have another department representative, Jayashree Sharma. She is the Additional Commissioner of Income Tax, again with NEAC. She's a 2003 IRS patch officer. Ma'am, welcome on board. And now let me turn to the industry representatives. We have Mr. Vishwanath Kini, who is a VP and Global Head of Tax for Tech Mahindra, which operates in about 90 countries. He has over 3 decades of experience in different facets of tax, including direct tax, international tax, transfer pricing, indirect tax. Thank you, Vishwanath, for joining us today. We also have a pharma representative, and when we are talking about pandemic, we can't not afford to have a pharma rep with us, Rahul Verma, who is the Senior Director with Cipla, and with over 2 decades of experience on international transactions, integration, large transitions in different sectors, especially focused on the pharma. Rahul, welcome on board. And we also have Richa Sani, who is a chartered accountant with over 2 decades of experience, whose focus is on tax policy and dispute resolution matters. And she has seen the transition of the Income Tax Department, not only in India, but also globally in terms of responding to the various economic changes and also during the pandemic. So I welcome all the panel members, and let's begin with the discussion in terms of the faceless assessments. Interestingly, you would recall that it was not long back in the memory lane when we all used to queue up outside the income tax offices in different cities to file our tax returns. And especially if it was the last day of the filing deadline, then there used to be long queues. A blue color stamp used to be put on the paper tax returns, and a manual entry used to be made in the government's registers. And we used to get thrilled that finally the tax return for the year has been filed. The tax assessments were no different. We used to toil our way through the city traffic, spending 1 to 2 hours to reach the tax offices, make sure that we reach at least half an hour before the assessment time starts. And then we had to wait for the officers, and we had to literally plan about half a day, if not the full day, to make sure that a hearing goes through on that day. I think what I'm talking is all history now, and things have dramatically changed over a period of time. And when we talk about the e-assessments, I think thanks to the government and the Income Tax Department, they have taken the digitization to a very different extent. If we look at the last 5 or 7 years, I think there has been a lot of thrust from the government to digitize, automate, and make life easier for the taxpayers. If we look at the indirect taxes, GST, and now e-invoicing, and I think on the direct taxes, we have not been far behind, with submissions being made on in certain cities on emails and other digital modes, and now completely being automated to a contactless, faceless journey. With this, let me invite Richa to share a broad overview of how the new scheme will work, and then we shall open up for a panel discussion. Richa, over to you.
Thank you, Vikas. Before we move to discuss the faceless assessment scheme, let's briefly see how tax assessments are carried out across the globe. While most developed countries do use artificial intelligence platforms to verify tax returns and highlight discrepancies, but they tend to stick to the traditional methods of face-to-face meetings when it comes to tax assessments. So you'll see that some form of human interface is always there. This could be in form of visits by a tax officer or a team of officers, or the taxpayer may be asked to visit the tax office. In fact, in Canada, you will find that the tax authorities are not allowed to receive records by email due to security concerns. So it appears that India is indeed a pioneer in introduction of a faceless assessment scheme, where the human interface is sought to be completely eliminated. So let's now discuss what is being termed as a seamless, painless, and a faceless scheme, which appears to be one of its kind. So moving on to the faceless scheme. Now, this is a major structural reform, and it is the National E-Assessment Center, or the NEAC, based in Delhi, which will act as a single point of contact between the taxpayer and the tax department. It would facilitate and coordinate the proceedings in a centralized manner. NEAC would assign cases to specific assessment units in the regional e-assessment centers, and the assessment process will now involve various other units, that is the assessment units, verification units, technical units, and the review units. Now, this is a totally new concept. The communication of all the units inter se would happen through the NEAC and in electronic mode. The exceptions to the scheme include cases of serious frauds, major tax evasion, search matters, and international tax cases. So what we'll see is that going forward, all the assessment orders, other than these exceptions, will be passed by NEAC. Otherwise, the assessment will be considered to be invalid. Now let's look at some of the key features of the scheme. So till now, all the tax-related matters in a particular city have been dealt by the tax department of that particular city. There is now going to be a radical change. Assessment will be done by a team sitting anywhere in the country, and this will also flow into a review system. So a concept of team-based review of the draft order has also been introduced. Assessment units will be chosen electronically through an automated allocation system, which will be based on artificial intelligence and machine learning based algorithms. The identity of the tax officer who's carrying out your assessment will be unknown to the taxpayer, and the taxpayer will not be required to visit the tax office anymore. So the outcome which is sought to be achieved by this scheme is transparency, elimination of individual discretion, and subjectivity. So it is expected that this will foster voluntary tax compliance. Now let's broadly see how the procedure of the assessment will work and responsibility of different units under the scheme. So as I have mentioned earlier, the NEAC would be the single point of contact with the taxpayer. It will issue notice to the taxpayer for initiation of the assessment proceedings, and if at any stage in the proceedings, any information or documents they are required from the taxpayer or any other person, the communication will happen only and only through the NEAC. NEAC would assign the case to specific assessment units, as I mentioned earlier, through an automated allocation system. And at any stage where a modification prejudicial to the taxpayer is proposed, NEAC shall give appropriate opportunity to the taxpayer to explain its position before the order is finalized. And this could include the facility of video conferencing as well. Now, once the assessment is completed, NEAC will transfer all electronic records to the jurisdictional assessing officer for imposition of penalty, recovery of demand, and prosecution proceedings, etc. Let's now look at what the role of the other units is going to be like. As far as the assessment unit is concerned, as the name suggests, it will perform the function of carrying on assessments, identification of the issues where clarification is required from the taxpayer, analysis of any material or details which are furnished by the taxpayer, and drafting of orders. The verification units will carry out examination of books of accounts and witnesses and recording statements. The technical unit will provide technical support and advice on technical, accounting, business, and any other technical matter on which there is a request from the assessment unit. Review units will review the order to see whether the relevant material, evidence, facts, provisions of law have been duly incorporated and the applicable judicial precedents have been considered. Now let's look at the taxpayer charter. Now, interestingly, several countries in the world have also adopted the taxpayer charter. In some cases, it has been made an integral part of law, and in others, it is part of the administrative directives. However, we find that in all cases, the aim is to explain what a taxpayer can expect from the tax department and what is expected out of him. So, and it is also based on the aim to nurturing the relationship of mutual trust and respect between the tax department and the taxpayer. We've noticed some interesting points in charters of the countries. We would like to highlight a few of them. In some countries, there is a right given to the taxpayer not to be subjected to retrospective legislation or taxation, a right to request a payment plan in case the taxpayer is facing financial hardship, a right to relief from penalties and interest in exceptional or extraordinary circumstances. And some charters recognize that the fact that people sometimes do make mistakes while trying to meet their obligations, and a commitment to differentiate between mistakes and deliberate actions. In some cases, for example, Australia, there is a commitment to small businesses to ensure efficiency in their interactions with the tax department. Now let's move to the Indian Charter. Finance Act 2020 introduced Section 119A in the Act enabling CBDT to adopt a taxpayer charter, thus giving it a legal backing. The charter, which was unveiled on 13th August 2020, is divided into two parts. There are 14 commitments from the tax department and 6 expectations from the taxpayer. The most noteworthy commitment being to treat the taxpayer as honest, respect privacy of the taxpayer, and not to be more intrusive than actually required during any inquiry. The taxpayers are also expected to honestly disclose full information and fulfill their compliance obligations. In case of grievances, the taxpayer can reach out to the taxpayer charter cell. So in nutshell, a really people-centric and a taxpayer-friendly move, which will benefit all the honest taxpayers. With this, I request Vikas to step in.
Thank you, Richa, for providing us an overview of the new assessment schemes, and shortly the appellate scheme will also be notified. I think at this juncture, it will be good to get a perspective from Mr. Abrol and Jayashree ma'am in terms of what was the actual thought process and what was the genesis which led to this big time change from personal physical assessments to completely automated. And as you rightly mentioned, probably India is one of the very few countries which has gone far ahead in terms of this kind of a faceless assessment. So Mr. Abrol and Jayashree, it will be good to hear your views. Okay.
So the department had already been thinking of going digital for a long time, as you can see the journey that we've made so far. And last year, as you can see, that we had begun a pilot project of the erstwhile e-assessment scheme. And we began with around 58,320 cases to be run on pilot basis, though that has not been tested end to end as of now, but we are definitely on a surer road now. And as a natural jump, it was only natural. It was only time when we would have, gone ahead full steam with the faceless assessments. Number one was the guiding principle was quality. We needed to improve upon the quality of assessments, and especially now when the pandemic came, it became all the more important that we think of a scheme wherein there's no more physical interaction between the taxpayers and the assessing officers, and also to make it more easy we are bringing in the concept of voluntary compliance, wherein we are giving all the information which is available with the department in the 26AS form. So in order to promote voluntary compliance and to improve the quality of assessments and for the ease of the taxpayers. And of course, we want to bring in more and more taxpayers in the tax net. So the more easy it is for them to comply, I think we can expect, our tax base to increase in the times to come.
I think 4 points you rightly mentioned, ma'am: quality, voluntary, ease of doing, and increasing the tax base. I think that the fourth factor was probably the guiding factor to increase the tax base from the tax department's perspective. And before we come back to you on this point, I think it'll be good to hear from industry stalwarts. Vishnath, what's your take on this move? Because you are seeing and witnessing and experiencing in roughly about 90 countries where your company operates, and you deal with the tax authorities over there. So how do you see this big change coming our way, and what benefits do you see out of it?
I think this is going to be a significant change for the industry like us, because I think we are used to, as you mentioned in the beginning, that we are used to this physical assessment stage where you really meet across the officer and explain the point. Now, in this particular scenario, what we are actually seeing is you really don't know where our assessment would go and where it would be assessed. So the NESC is the one who will decide through an AI as to which state it would actually go. I think the challenge for the industry is, as long as it goes to the officer, I mean, though it's an AI through which the whole mechanism is going to work, we really don't know whether it will go to the officer who understands an information technology business and what a model is. And, we have, I think in normal physical also, I think there are not less than 20-25 hearings what we have. And we really don't know whether we, in such faceless way, whether we would be able to explain our model to the officer through a faceless mechanism. So that's, I think, the biggest worry as far as the industry like us is concerned.
Great. Ma'am, I think one point which the industry is raising right now is that in a normal assessment proceedings, there were about, say, a dozen or more personal hearings where they were able to explain their viewpoint, which Vishnath mentioned. How would this get facilitated when there is completely faceless assessment going on? Will an option be given for a video conferencing facility? How will it actually fall out in terms of the personal hearings?
For personal hearings, actually, we are coming out with an SOP as to in what circumstances the personal hearing would be allowed. And I'm sure complexity of the case is definitely going to be one exception where the personal hearing would be allowed, besides some monetary limits or number of issues involved, and all those factors would be taken into account. So as far as the apprehension of, the manpower goes, that how much the officers, see the officers who were doing assessment earlier, the same officers are going to do the assessment now. So far as the harnessing of the technology is concerned, that is only for the purpose of, random allocation or allocation of cases, ultimate officers themselves. And for this, since the faceless is as much new for you as to us, so we are going to have extensive training programs for our officers so that they're comfortable with the new technology and they're able to handle all kinds of issues.
Okay, so there will be some SOPs which will be coming in. There will be some flexibility built in terms of the complexities involved, and there will be necessary facilitation and training on behalf of the government itself for the tax department in order to familiarize the officers. I think very key factors you shared with us, and that is very comforting. Now, let me change tracks in terms of the different sector. Rahul, you represent an industry which is one of the most regulated industries, not only in India, but overseas. I think the number of forms and the number of regulations that you have to comply with is simply mind-boggling. I think you at least need one person just to keep a checklist ready all the time. How do you see this big change coming for your sector?
Yeah, I think like others' impression is a very welcome move, for us and for the entire industry as such, because the kind of time we get lost in terms of departmental proceeding at times, going and visiting department and waiting for at times, at the department, and all this thing is kind of would be dealt with sitting across your desktop and kind of making your robust submission over the e-systems. So that is obviously a welcome move, and and a lot more transparency which will come across in terms of the whole the process, the way it is going to take shape now onwards. And as far as as Vishwanathan put the point, like there's industry nuances. Like the pharma has its own nuances, its own regulatory environment, and its own global compliances. Right from the US FDA to Indian MPA, and many other regulation which comes into play. And then similarly in IT, there's its own nuances. So I was wondering whether this automated allocation tool or the risk management system that has been deployed by the National Assessment Center, whether it has some kind of industry domain expertise as well built in. If that be so, that probably will be more helpful for the industry to kind of explain its submission a little faster. And I think it would be good if industry would also come to know in terms of what kind of the intelligence has been built up in the tool to know how the cases are being allocated, and how the risk management framework, which is explaining the scheme, how does that work, and similarly, there is going to be examination tool which is working on the backside in the e-systems, and how that assessment tools are working. So it will be good if we industry could get to know about all this, and probably industry will also prepare in a better way, and give submission which are more compliant and more conducive to the overall environment which is going to come. But overall, it's a very welcome move, and we look forward to make full use of this opportunity, and it will save lot of time for both at the department angle as well as from the assessee side. Over to you, Vikas.
Thanks, Rahul. Jayashree ma'am, I think one point which Rahul raised, and I think a similar concern or issue has been raised by other industry colleagues as well, is that they have been explaining the issues in terms of their specific industry to the assessing officers for long. And probably it was much easier to explain the issues relating to their sector, stroke industry, stroke particular business. Now, how will the returns be picked up for assessment? Because if they go to a particular cell which understands the pharma industry, or say IT industry or automotive industry, it's much easier to explain. Otherwise, it could be reopening the whole discussions which have been going on for past many years. So any guidance from your side, ma'am, in terms of how the cases will be picked up and which cells it will go to?
Yeah. So cases would be picked up. As of now, they are being picked up on the basis of CAS, the computer-aided selection mechanism that we have. And it's as of now, it's the same. But yes, we are having extensive discussions with the different industries also to build in artificial intelligence and machine learning within the system. But let's say that we'll take 1 to 2 years to stabilize the entire process. As of now, it's just a beginning for us as well. We'll be picking up certain learnings from the first year of our faceless assessment scheme. And thereafter, definitely you will be expecting. Along the way also, we'll be incorporating certain learnings. And you will definitely see that all concerns of the industries would be addressed by and by.
So what we are hearing from you, ma'am, is that right now the cases will go based on the AI and the machine learning to any of these cells. But gradually, the idea is that they should go to the specialized cells, which is focused more on the sector or the industry.
Yeah, the technical units that we have, we are trying to build them up as the centers of excellence, and they'll probably be, have all the points about different industries, and they'll be able to tackle these points. But so far as assessment is concerned, the assessment units would be doing it, but for the technical assistance part relating to an industry, that would be taken from the technical units.
So I think, Rahul, this concern gets addressed to some extent, if not fully, that initially also the inputs will be coming from a technical unit, which will have a lot of understanding, knowledge and research based on a particular sector and industry. And gradually, maybe as the system evolves, and as Madam rightly mentioned, that initially, I think we all will have to adjust to the new system from the taxpayers as well as tax department perspective. And over a period of time, say maybe 2 to 3 years, I think things will get streamlined. I think we all are geared up for that. Ma'am, one question which comes naturally as a fallout of this is that what happens to the existing cases which are going on before a particular assessing officer? Do all those cases get transitioned automatically to NEAC, or they continue at present? How will it work now?
No, all these cases would get transferred to NEAC. So NEAC would be sending out an intimation to this effect. So we expect to complete it by 15th September. But it may take some time because it's a huge lot of change for us so far as, the distribution of work is concerned. So almost 2/3 of the manpower we are shifting towards a faceless assessment scheme. And 1/3 is the one which remains with the residual or the territorial jurisdiction. So it's a big exercise, but we just hope, we are trying to send out information in all the cases except for the search cases and the international taxation cases. Except for those, in all cases which are pending before the AOs, we are sending out information that they'll be now assessed under the faceless assessment scheme. So far, whatever notices have gone and whatever responses have been given, they won't be rendered redundant. They would be taken into account only if the faceless AO feels that some information is not there, or he requires more information to assess the case. Only then they'll be sending out notices again. Otherwise, based on what has been filed so far, if the complete reply is already on record, we'll be going by that and completing our assessment.
So the information.
One
Yeah,
question,
go ahead.
Vikas. So, ma'am, we were just wondering, about the transfer pricing assessments. What is, how are they going to transition to assessment, and especially, the transfer pricing cases for central units?
For transfer pricing cases, we are expecting an SOP from the board shortly. How they'll be handled for the domestic taxpayers, how these cases would be handled. So once that SOP is shared with us, then I'll be able to comment on that. As of now, we are as much at sea as the others are.
Okay. What do you with us?
Thanks, Rahul. Ma'am, there is also an indication that the assessing officer continues to be the assessing officer, and all the relevant materials, papers, documents, etc. will be given to him. Can you throw some light? How will it work? The case will be picked up by the NEAC, all information to be submitted over there, and then will it be passed on to the assessing officer? And how will the scheme work as we go along?
So once the assessment is completed, or if there's a non-compliance penalty order, once that has been passed, basically it's all the electronic records. So all these electronic records would be transferred to the jurisdictional AO, and the jurisdictional AO would continue to be there for the purpose of recovery of demand, for passing penalty orders, for rectifications. Even if you want to raise any grievance, that can be raised before the jurisdictional AO.
Okay. Vishnath, we were discussing, you had one query in terms of the jurisdictional AO, which Madam mentioned, in terms of which High Court decisions to be considered, because right now we have reached some stage of confusion or clarity, if I may use those words, how will it function? I think, Vishnu, it will be good to raise your query with Madam now.
Yeah. So I think, yeah, I want to raise that query, because with your permission, and there's one more what I just wanted to have a clarity on. Suppose, for example, an AI or a machine learning does not pick up Tech Mahindra. Now, Tech Mahindra was being assessed by the jurisdictional AO till the last year. Now, will it mean that because it has not got picked up by AIMI, it will not be sent to the NEAC or REAC? That's my first question. Or all those cases which were under scrutiny till the last year, whether that would automatically be going for the NEAC and REAC mechanism? That's my first question. Second, I think the jurisdictional High Court issue, what we are not clear is, suppose we are assessed in Bombay, and the case of Tech Mahindra, say, goes to Delhi, and there are decisions of Delhi High Court which are against an SSC, while a Bombay High Court decision was in favor of an SSC. Generally, the jurisdictional assessing officer was bound to go ahead with the jurisdictional High Court's decision, which is a favorable one in favor of the SSC. Now, in this particular scenario, when this particular case is before a Delhi High Court assessing officer, will he be bound by the Delhi High Court adverse decision or a Bombay High Court favorable decision?
So as far as this is concerned regarding the legal issues, we have a technical unit which would be dealing with the legal issues. And yes, technical unit would be providing a legal viewpoint on it, which is common for all assessment units. All assessment units would follow that point on that legal issue. So that would be taken care of by the our technical unit, which would be dealing with the legal issues. So as far as granularities are concerned, they are still being worked upon, and by we would be sharing it with you. What was your first point?
Yeah, first point was, suppose I was assessed under scrutiny, in Bombay till the last year, and the AI and ML doesn't pick up my case. Is it something that I would still be considered for a faceless assessment, or because it has not got picked up, I would not be required to have a faceless assessment?
So it's not that they'll be 100% faceless, like all cases would be picked up for faceless assessments. If it would be picked up by AI, if you already have a pending assessment before the AO, that would automatically get transferred to the faceless if it's still pending. But in times to come, if it is picked up by the AI and ML, it would come for the faceless assessment scheme. Otherwise, that's it. Not even with the jurisdictional AO. So the idea is that all cases except the search cases and the international taxation cases, they would be assessed under the faceless assessment scheme. So only if your case is picked up, because the selection of case, there's no more discretion with the assessing officer, it would be picked up by the system or based on any information that we may receive. Okay,
so one more question, ma'am. When it actually goes to, say, a Delhi tax officer, though we are assessed in Bombay, will that officer who is now assigned this case would also be given all the past records of our company to him before he starts an assessment? The past assessment orders, what happened in the Commissioner Appeals, what happened in the tribunal. I mean, how will that flow of documentation happen from one place to another?
Yeah, so far as the documentation is concerned, what is already available on the system, because the cases were already being assessed under the e-proceedings. So all that is available, all that is already available with the AO who is assessing the case. In the system, it is there. And as far as very old records are concerned, we are in the process of digitizing the same. And we are still working how it would be done, but then it would always be available.
So, ma'am, as a matter of, one, linked question to that, like as a matter of SOPs, with the National Assessment Unit or the Regional Assessment Unit, how many years of, past order are to be kind of looked at? Because I think there's a lot of history which is self-explain, the assessee behavior and its past history in terms of, and many things are self-explanatory. So I was, it will be helpful if, the audience would know how many years back you would be, you know, looking at the orders to kind of, you know, form your
Last
current
3
year proposal?
years, last 3 assessment years. As of now, it is available in the system from AY 15-16 onwards.
Right, very helpful.
Okay. So I think, Vishnath, your question has been answered that being an IT company, probably AI and ML will favor you, and your case will not get picked up, but Rahul's case will get picked up, right? So I think that must be comforting you. Rahul may not be happy with that. Ma'am, one question which comes in our mind is that on regular basis, when the information is sought by the assessing officer, and especially for larger corporates, the information is to be collated not only within India, but from overseas as well. So it takes more time, and often adjournment was sought. How will the adjournment mechanism work under NEAC? Because that's an integral part of the assessment process.
Yeah. So the adjournment facility is being provided in the on the e-filing website. So when they log into the portal, then they can seek adjournment through it.
And
Okay.
this adjournment is automatic, or there is a formal communication that will come to us? Because the thing is, at times, there is long questionnaire which takes at times, months along for, fulfilling the compliance, from a large company perspective like, ours. So, will that adjournment be communicated, and or it will be automatic if we request, say 30 days adjournment for some, massive information that we could take that time is automatic, or
No,
it's
it's
by the
not.
formal order?
No, it's not automatic. You'll be communicating as to on by which date it has been adjourned.
And is there
Though
possibility?
we'll be trying. The instructions are that we'll be trying to give you a date that you have asked for. But then, all the factors of time barring and all the number of cases with a particular AO would be considered, but it won't be automatic.
Great. Ma'am, is there any restriction on the number of adjournments? Has the department thought about it?
No, none whatsoever as of now.
Okay. So I think,
we are trying to bring in, in times to come, this is all that we have thought of, that, we have parameterized questionnaire and parameterized responses if possible, or we may ask give an option to the assessee if they want to file, like what kind of reply have they filed? Have they filed a partial reply? Then we'll keep the window open for them to file the complete response, or once they say it's a complete response, after that, the window would be closed for them. On these lines, we are thinking as of now.
But there's a requirement, sorry, Vikas, there's a requirement of putting your e-signature on the submission. So, if you helpful, if you could clarify that the signature or digital signature is of the power of attorney holder from the from the management, or it has to be applied on the same person who is authorized to sign the return of income for the company.
One who is authorized to sign the return of income. If you have to file a return of income by putting your digital signatures, then that digital signature would be required. Otherwise, the EVC modes, normal EVC modes are also available for filing the reply. For cases other than those who are not, filing return under digital signature.
Right. So effectively, for all the e-returns, we normally end up, putting the signature of the managing director. So in all the assessment submission, it is to be, we need to put the signature or digital signature of the managing director itself.
Yeah, but no, soon we'll be incorporating the power of attorney also, and let's see how that moves on. So we'll just
because it will be too difficult for
sure.
managing director to kind of look at each and every submission.
Yeah, so, power of attorney we are coming with.
There's a power attorney, and that will be helpful if you could clarify that.
Sure.
Yeah, I think very relevant question, Rahul, you raised that every time does only the authorized signatory or with the power of attorney, the authorized signatory can sign and file the return. Ma'am, one of the key issues which India faces today is we are considered to be one of the most litigious societies in terms of the tax litigation. And I think both the sides need to shoulder the pain and the blame for the ongoing tax litigation. And in fact, there are various statistics which are thrown that probably we are amongst the top 3 in terms of tax litigation. Now that the NEAC offers a great platform and there are technical and research units available with the department in terms of re-looking or having a fresh look at the old issues as well. Like we are one country which provided software competence and IT competence to the world, but we could not decide whether software is a good or a service for more than a decade. So these kind of issues, I think it provides us a great platform which the government has gone ahead with. Any thoughts whether those kind of issues can be relooked at and a consensus be arrived in terms of one position? Because that itself, so we did some calculations, I think 50% plus litigation that goes on in the country can be cut down if one position is taken by the department and consistently told. So what's your thought on that?
See, I'm not sure about this because for this we have our TPL and FT and TR divisions which are involved. So I won't be able to offer any comments on this. But yes, we can expect that in times to come, if we get a clearer guidelines from FT and TR on an issue, that would be incorporated in the technical units.
Definitely. Ma'am, humble submission on this point is twofold. One, in terms of the wider issues, if a consensus can be raised and one position is taken by the department, I think that itself will cut down on large part of the litigation which goes on. Because today we have different decisions by the tribunals, high courts, etc., which adds to the litigation. And second is, if clarity can be brought in through either circulars or clarification, that will definitely go a long way in terms of cutting down on the litigation and making India a better place to do business. Having said that, let's move on. I think one experience which most of the panel members shared earlier, and some of the queries are also coming on the chat box, is that in certain cases, if the assessee itself wants to represent the case either through a video conference, will that facility be provided? It means two things. One, will it be given, will the taxpayer be given an option to represent the case in order to explain the finer points in terms of the business technicalities, etc.? Or as you mentioned, there will be only SOPs or the procedure laid out, and if you fall in that category, then only you will be given an option. So what's the thought process right now on that?
See, as it is mentioned in the SO, the personal hearing would only be allowed in cases where an addition is proposed in the draft assessment order and assessee wants to represent. But then again, given the number of assessees that we have, the government is bringing in SOP for this as to under which circumstances, and the principal CC NEAC with approval of board would be coming out with that SOP. The circumstances in which personal hearing would be allowed. But essentially, it would only be allowed in cases where a draft assessment order has reached assessee and there is modification to his returned income or the tax payable. And another case of video conferencing personal hearing would, of course, be a case of summons or where the books of accounts have to be examined. But that would be from the end of the assessing officer. Okay,
very helpful, ma'am. So once the draft assessment order is prepared, will it be shared with the taxpayers to give their final inputs? And what happens after that in terms of the appellate process vis-a-vis CIT appeals as well as DRP? How will that function now?
Yeah, draft assessment order, every show cause notice would be accompanied by draft assessment order. So wherever the show cause notice, wherever there's an addition being made to the return income, so a draft assessment order would accompany the show cause notice. And the appellate process remains the same so far as CIT appeals is concerned. DRP, we'll, in the faceless scenario, we are still thinking how that would be incorporated, whether that would be faceless or some, through emails, they'll be sharing with the DRP. That process is still being worked out. But CIT appeals would remain the same as your jurisdictional CIT appeals as before. That process would still be available to you.
And will that be a physical process or the aim is to move it to the digital process only?
We are moving it to the digital process. E-appeals is very soon coming, most probably by 25th of September.
Okay. And ma'am, just again the same question, how does the DRP process works then? Will it also be digital?
No, it's not yet been decided because inputs are required from the DRP's end also. So once inputs are received from all the stakeholders, then a decision would be taken. Our TPL team is working on it, and that would also be notified shortly.
Okay, so we will wait for the appellate process to be notified in terms of digital process as well as the DRP process. I think we'll eagerly wait for those clarifications on this aspect. Madam, what's the status on the TDS cases, tax withheld at source? Is the aim to cover them also in the digital process, or the manual assessments will go on for the time being?
The idea is to bring them into the faceless, but even that is being worked on. As also on cases, set aside cases also, because for that also we need some data to be uploaded by the jurisdictional AOs. So once that we are clear on that procedure, then we'll be taking a call on it.
Okay, but the idea and the thought process is to move everything to
Yes.
the digital platform. So
Yeah.
it's a matter of time. Even on TDS, we will move the TDS assessment processes to the digital platforms.
Yes, yeah.
Okay, great. Madam, a natural question is, what happens to the 263 cases? How will that mechanism be worked out now? Will section 263 be relevant after this implementation of NEAC? And if yes, how will that work now?
So far as 263, 264 are concerned, that will be your jurisdictional CITs only will be doing it. It won't be handled at the level of NEAC or REAC. So that process still remains, because the role that PCITs have been given in the faceless as of now is only as an administrative head. They don't have any role so far as the assessment of cases is concerned. Only, if there are issues like transfer of cases or their comments are required, whether a personal hearing needs to be given. For all those things, they are a part of the approval mechanism, but not so far as the finalization of assessment is concerned. So the 263, 264 would lie with the jurisdictional CIT, because once the assessment is complete, since all the electronic records would be transferred to the jurisdictional AO, so that process can be taken up with the jurisdictional CIT.
Okay. Madam, another similar question which is coming on the chat box is in relation to the reassessment cases as well. So what happens in case of reassessment cases where notice has been issued and where notice is yet to be issued? Will those get transferred, or how will it work now?
So only reassessment cases in which the notice has already been issued, they would come within the faceless. On where it is yet to be issued, a call would be taken whether in times to come a notice, because as of now only the pending cases, reassessment cases are being transferred to the faceless assessment scheme. A call is yet to be taken for all such cases where the notice is yet to be issued as to who would be issuing that notice. So far as I understand, the thought process is that in future, any notice to be issued should only be system-based or based on any information and by the faceless units only. But let's wait for it.
Okay. So again, the thought process over here is to transfer the cases to NEAC, but we'll wait for further guidelines from the department on that. Ma'am, another
All
question.
all pending reassessments would stand transferred, definitely.
Okay. Okay. All pending cases get transferred, new cases, guidelines to be issued,
Yes.
and we'll see how things shape up.
Yeah.
Madam, natural follow-up of that is in terms of the penalties. Now, our understanding based on the plain reading suggests that compliance relating to penalties will be taken care of by the NEAC. What about the penalty proceedings under Section 270A and other provisions? Can you share your thoughts on that?
So, so far as 270A and other penalties, other than the non-compliance penalties are concerned, they'll be initiated by the faceless, of course, since it has to be mentioned in the assessment order. So they'll be initiated by the REAC AOs, but they'll be taken up, penalty proceedings would be taken up before the jurisdictional AOs.
Okay, okay. And there are a lot of questions coming on the chat box in terms of the jurisdiction, which you have already covered. that further guidelines need to be issued in terms of which jurisdictional high court rulings will be applied to. I think the department is working on that. There are a couple of questions coming exactly on the same point. So ma'am has clarified that department is working on that. In terms of the jurisdictional guidelines, we'll have to wait for that for some time before some guidance comes up. Ma'am, in terms of the infrastructure, I'm sure the department has worked on that, but especially in tier 2 cities and towns, do you feel that there could be a challenge from the taxpayer's perspective or department's perspective to carry out e-assessments over there?
Yeah, certain orders where we have already made regarding the diversion of cost for the faceless, but we are also getting inputs from our field officers, and I think board would take a call on it. Certain recalibration maybe, need to be made to those orders considering the inputs from the field. So once I think a final call is yet to come after taking, inputs from the fields, who will also tell us about the difficulties that the taxpayers may face.
Okay. And ma'am, what about the cases where both the normal domestic transactions are there and international transactions are there? Since there is not much clarity on that, how will those kind of cases be handled? Will they continue at present in the same format, or half of that gets shifted to NEAC, or the full case gets shifted to NEAC?
No, the full case would get shifted to NEAC. We are building in the mechanism for reference to TPOs and all, and DRT, as I told you before. So the full case is going to shift to NEAC.
Okay. In terms of, ma'am, now what we are hearing is that there is understanding being reached between different government bodies, whether it is the CIBC and CBDT, whether it is relating to ROC or SEBI. Now, different kinds of returns get filed with different authorities, and there are different premises or bases for these returns getting filed. I think one question which is coming up is, on what basis will NEAC use that information in order to pick up the cases for assessment and also do the assessment on those? Because there are very different bases to be applied for the GST vis-a-vis the income tax. And I think the classic debate of transfer pricing valuation versus custom valuation comes into play. So any thoughts on that that will help us understand the thought process in the department?
See, as you know, the income tax department has been receiving information from different type of departments, and these come as specified financial transaction information to us. Now, you must have noticed that even the verification unit under the e-assessment, faceless assessment scheme would also be carrying out e-verification under section 133C. So basically, the idea is that all these nuggets of information coming from different departments, they would be e-verified. There'll be an e-response would be solicited from the assessees. And after considering this, all those which would remain unverified or unmatched, only they would be taken up under 133C first. Even after that process, if they still remained unverified, only those cases would then be picked up for scrutiny. So, and that too, when there are multiple, nuggets of information which remain unverified in a particular case.
So that's very comforting, ma'am. What we are hearing is that the department has started receiving information from different sources, and based on the AI, ML, and other parameters, that information is being analyzed. Only where certain discrepancies are being noticed, the cases will get picked up. And we recently heard that the percentage of cases which are getting picked up for assessment are going down year by year. That's very comforting. I think the last year we heard was only 0.25% cases have been picked up. Again, a very comforting feeling coming to the taxpayers. Ma'am, is it possible to share broad guidelines? I'm not asking now, but in future, the parameters which will be there to pick up the tax cases, so that taxpayers are also prepared for those. The SOP proceedings, etc., that you mentioned, based on the internal department learning, if you have better guidance on what kind of cases are getting picked up. Because I think the idea from the department side is also to avoid the regular repetitive litigation which goes on year, I don't think any large company is spared in any of the years. Their cases definitely get picked up religiously year on year. Is there a thought that to avoid that kind of a litigation, give a rest to maybe both Vishwanath and Rahul for 1 or 2 years and pick up specific cases where the department feels that there is something which is missing in action over there? Your thoughts, ma'am, on this subject?
See, we are revisiting the risk parameters and of course the
Right.
learning that we have in our first year. So all the risk parameters would be revisited, and but I'm not very sure whether they would be ultimately shared or not. For that, I'll get back to you. That is for the board to decide whether these risk parameters would be disclosed or not.
Yeah. Ma'am, while the NEAC is deciding along with the board, the humble submission from the industry right now is that most of the large corporates are facing litigation year on year, and almost 50% plus of the issues that are raised, they are being litigated for last 10 years plus. If something can be done on that okay, this is a consensus which the board or the NEAC will arrive at, I think again it will help the taxpayers in terms of cutting down on the litigation. And of course, with the advent of technology and the information available with you, I think maybe the department can also focus on cases which are largely escaping the tax net completely rather than litigating on the same issue again and again. Now, one question which is coming up on the chat box is in terms of the special audits, which sometimes get recommended by the department. How will that scheme work now?
Special audit also, we'll be referring it to the technical unit, and the thought process as of now is we'll have a panel of chartered accountants for conducting the special audit. So it would be done under the faceless scheme itself.
So special audits will also move to the faceless.
Yes.
Okay.
All assessments.
All assessments.
Except the only two exceptions, all assessments are moving.
And ma'am, the two exceptions which include international tax and one more where the central
cases, yes.
Such cases. Is there a thought to move them also over 3 to 5 years on the NEAC platform, or they will continue on manual basis right now?
No, maybe in 3 to 5 years or maybe more, they'll move to faceless. Maybe less also, you never know.
Oh, okay. That's very interesting. So I think the big thought that we are taking from this discussion is that everything is going to be automated, being digital, supported by the AI. And I think the department will be receiving a lot of information from different departments as well. Vishwanath, any specific question in terms of that you have besides the points that we already covered today?
No, nothing specific. On the contrary, I think conceptually, I think it's a great concept of making this faceless. I think the main objective was to avoid any chances of any corruption, etc., which I think is a great idea. The only challenge, I think, for an industry like us is the number of issues what we get entangled year after year, and how do we really address those. And I hope there are no new issues which come because of faceless. I think that's the worrisome issue. The second is, as I mentioned, I mean, we handle this international assessments, and I think we are interacting with an Australian tax officer. There, I think for 1.5 years, we have been exchanging documents with the officer. And even now, the basic document, he is not able to actually understand what an SOW means or a purchase order means for an information technology company. And in fact, there is a 2-hour session what he has fixed the next week. So I only hope that in India, these type of challenges do not become more frequent, because I think the number of issues what the Indian industry faces, it's going to be a Herculean task if we were to get into each and every point to be explained faceless, because that is, I think that's the biggest concern for an industry like us. Yeah, because
okay. I think let me speak on behalf of the department and Madam Jayashree right now. I think besides NEAC, the 5 specific units which are being created, I think they should help NEAC and the taxpayers in terms of a focused attention and better understanding of the issues. I'm sure, Vishwanath, initially there will be some teething in issues, but gradually I think we will all overcome those, because it's a big move which the department has taken. We wholeheartedly welcome that move. And I think results, we all will see the fruitful results as we go along. Rahul, any last question from your side on this?
Yeah, sure. So I think one, question which I am looking for an clarification to on para number 16A. While we understood, there is going to be show cause notice on a draft order for each adjustment which is proposed. But when I read 16A, it also gives power to National E-Assessment Center, the power to pass orders straight away. So, will there be any case wherein, this order would be passed straight away without giving, opportunity of being heard to the assessee without a show cause notice or things like that? And, another thing which I would like to ask is, what is being done for a, large mindset change in terms of, because while it's a big change in terms of, the technology and the process and all that, while, we always hear of revenue targets and, high pitch assessments. So, is there something around that could be clarified, that there's no, separate targets are given to the various regional units, so on and so forth.
So
Ma'am,
far as the
on a
budget
lighter
targets,
note,
yeah.
Yeah, ma'am.
Yes.
On a lighter note, I think Rahul is asking, since he's from pharma industry, will there be specific targets to overcome the pandemic deficit on the direct tax revenue?
No, so far as budget collection is concerned, that doesn't come with the faceless assessment officer. So you should have no concerns with regard to that. And there was another issue raised by Mr. Verma
16,
regarding 16. Yeah, see, a finalization of assessment orders would only be in cases where there is no addition. Where there is addition, a show cause notice has to go. And also the cases where there's no addition, they may be taken up for review also. That's another matter. But in case there's no addition, they'll be finalized as such. There have been instances in faceless where on the basis of, comprehensive reply filed by the assessee in response to 143.2 itself, we have finalized the order on the basis of that reply, accepting the returned income. So if a comprehensive reply, and when I say comprehensive reply, please, you need to educate the taxpayers also. We are not looking, at times for limited case also, we find 300 pages, 3,000 pages of replies being filed. This exercise, the taxpayers also need to change their mindset. Excessive documentation is not going to help anyone. So if we want this system to succeed, it is better if we give, parameterized reply and comprehensive replies without being, the redundant replies being pushed to us.
Yeah,
So
I think very valid point, ma'am. But I understand for transfer pricing at times,
yeah,
the officer
that is a different issue. That is a different
and
issue.
even for some technical issues, it require a lot of data. But having said that, is there any limitation, on the data, in terms of 10 MB or, some data
50 MB is the limitation as of now. But then looking at the kind of replies we are getting, so we may need to revise it. But as of now, 50 MB. So number of attachments you'll need to make, 5 MB per attachments. It's like that.
Is it possible for assessee to also, give some kind of cloud access to, data where you can upload, in the cloud, and the same could be downloaded by the e-assessment units?
This is a good suggestion. We'll just, I'll just point it out and we'll see. As of now, no, nothing of this sort. Considering the security and all those issues, I think. But let's see if we can work around this also.
Sure. I think the message coming from the department is be precise in the submissions also. No point submitting the plethora of documents unless it is actually required. File in an executive summary also for the department officers also to understand. I think we are at the end of the hour, but we are still receiving a lot of questions. Clearly shows the interest of the participants as well as taxpayers to better understand the system and comply. I think we all have a lot of expectations from the government and the department. But at the same time, I would also like to remind all of us about the clarion call which the Honorable Prime Minister gave, that while government and department has moved a step ahead, in fact, many steps ahead in terms of easing the compliance burden, making it very transparent. I think the ball also lies in the court of the taxpayers also to come forward, make sure that they file their tax returns and meet their tax obligations as well. I think both sides have to move forward in order to ensure that there is larger compliance, tax to GDP ratio improves, and I think we progress towards a 5 trillion and gradually towards a 10 trillion target as an economy. It's been very interesting discussion. Madam, number of questions I've got clarified. Thanks to Ashish sir and you for joining us and giving us this perspective. It was a privilege to have you with us, and you very succinctly clarified most of the points, and we understand that there are a few areas where the board and the NEAC and the department will work in terms of bringing out the clarifications. We eagerly await those clarifications. Thank you very much once again. And Vishnath, Rahul, and Richa, thank you very much for being on the panel. You made it very interesting, and your questions were very relevant, very specific. Thank you very much. And thanks to all the audience for joining us.
Thank you very much. Thank you.